So, Ty, there's a million things to talk about. And the first one, I just want to address this report that Kevin Weeks came out with yesterday. And that was that he said, like all teams, players gritted out to play through major injuries in the playoffs. My sources tell me that soon-to-be Vezina winner Linus Ullmark was playing through a debilitating and painful injury that limited his mobility and technique. What does that mean to you that he played as late into the series with this report coming out?
Yeah, I can tell you that based on what I have heard and seen as well, that there is an injury for Linus Ullmark. Now, I don't know the severity of it. I don't know how much it limited him, but I've heard similar things to what Kevin Weeks was reporting. Heard and seen similar things, I should say. And what I would say is that it makes the decision to play him in games 3, 4, 5, and 6 all the more insane to me. I don't, when you're up 3-1 coming back to Boston, the game 5 in your building, that is as close to a consequence-free start that you can give a backup goaltender in the playoffs. Aside from up 3-0, 3-1 in your building, extra day of rest. Why didn't you get Jeremy Swayman going there? Unless Jeremy Swayman has a similar significant injury that he borderline can't play through, he should have gotten the net for one of those games. He should have gotten the net in game 6. I thought it was really interesting that leading up to game 7, I knew on Saturday that Montgomery was going to play Swayman because of what he said about Swayman. Mm-hmm. But he said something. He said, I feel confident giving him the net. It's like giving Roger Clemens the ball in game 7. Okay, well, Jim, Roger Clemens would also get the ball in game 3 or 4 if he's pitching in game 7. Yeah. That was not the case. The Yankees or the Red Sox don't hold Roger Clemens out until game 7. They put him in sometime along the way.
Sure.
So that didn't happen. And it just makes that decision all the more baffling.
There's not a timestamp on, or at least unless you know more about what Kevin Weeks said or reported about when this injury happened. Is this the mystery injury that was it New Jersey that apparently he got hurt in, or he was held out in New Jersey? It was like about a week before the season was over.
So he gets to start in Jersey. I'm forgetting who it was exactly. I want to say it was Nico Hischier, but it could have been someone else. Crashes into Ullmark early in that game, upends him, and he gets up kind of slow, but he looks okay. He finishes the game. He has a good game. And then the injury you're probably talking about is the Washington game, which is the Tuesday before the game 81 of the regular season. He's extending left to right. He's going down, and he gets up kind of, he's shaking out his leg. He ends up leaving the game. They say it's fine. It was cramping up. Then I want to say in game 2 during a penalty kill, he gets up real slow after a save. It looks like the same kind of area. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, it just kind of, you could tell he was fighting it. Yeah. He had a good game, but it eventually got worse and worse and worse to the point where you're saying, what are you doing? You got a pretty good goaltender behind him. Maybe give him a look here, but they didn't. And game 7, I thought Swayman was fine. I don't think he was great though.
I'm going to ask you a completely unfair question.
Yes.
If in a bubble, Bruce Cassidy was your coach at the beginning of the playoffs, does this team make it to the second round?
Yes. Yeah. Because Bruce Cassidy would adjust, but not adjust beyond recognition, if that makes sense. Like Montgomery was choosing a weird time of year to just completely reinvent his coaching style and reinvent his lines and his deployment. I think that's one thing that you could say about Bruce Cassidy was that, right or wrong, he went down with the ship. You look at that top line in 2019 when they were all banged up. He kept them together.
Yep.
You look at, so I think that if you give him this roster and you say beat the Florida Panthers 4 times in 7 games, I think Bruce Cassidy gets it done. But, that may be an unfair question, like you said, because are they this good?
Right. Yeah.
Are they on the road to begin the playoffs?
Yeah.
So that's the real question. But there were just combinations that Montgomery was using that I was like, we haven't seen that all year.
Do you think that explains the sloppiness, the poor passing, the inability to have any kind of syncopation? Like it just seemed like they weren't on the same page most of the time.
Yeah, I think that there's a mix of the unfamiliarity, but there's also just they were stunned and they never adjusted, and that's on your coaching staff to adjust. Like Florida had an aggressive forecheck. How did you not adjust at any point? It almost got worse.
Yeah.
The errors, I remember we talked after game 2
mm-hmm.
and I said, they're not going to play that bad again. That was horrible. And they did it 2 more times, 3 more times, just giving pucks away.
Yeah.
And it was just how is this continuing to happen? How does no one make an adjustment?
Yeah.
And that's on coaching. I think
that overtime was awful.
They couldn't move. They couldn't move in the
kept
OT.
giving up the puck.
I mean, and if it wasn't for Swayman making those 2 unbelievable saves, that thing would have been over immediately.
Oh yeah.
I mean, anybody who gives Swayman crap for that game, I don't get it. Let's go to Tyler. What's happening, Tyler? You're on with Ty Anderson.
Hi, guys. Hey, Ty. So I feel your pain. I'm heading to Boston right now, just sitting in traffic. But I had a question for Ty and for all you guys. Have you ever heard the Bruins get booed in a Game 7 at the beginning of the second period like that? That was the defining moment for Game 7 for me.
Yeah.
Stanley Cup Finals.
I was gonna say 2019.
2019, I remember.
Okay, so when did the Flyers tie it up in Game 7 in 2010? I think that was in the second period too, and there was a long video review.
Are you talking about in the when they were up 3 goals and then they tied it 3-3?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I remember. I think I was at I wasn't at the game.
You weren't at that.
I wasn't at that one. No.
There was a long video review on the Scott Hartnell goal that I think tied it or made it a 1-goal game, and the fans were losing their mind. And they were playing the Doors. I forget. Roadhouse Blues, and it's like, this is such a nervous building right now. I was like, no one is having a good time because everyone knew it was coming.
Oh yeah.
The scary part is we just thought of 2 right off the top of our heads.
Yeah,
and it's not good.
The 2014 Game 7 against Montreal was pretty brutal because that one was like, I think Canadians got up like 2-0 or 3-0 like early in that game. I think Danny Briere scored off like the first shot of the game.
Was that Tim Thomas's last game?
No, that was the 2012 one against Washington.
Oh, that's right. That's
the whole thing. Like this sucks and it's gonna sting forever. But like I also feel like I can't be killed because I have witnessed nothing but Game 7 heartbreak except for 1 year.
Except for one
in my 30 years on this planet. I'm used to it now. It sucks though.
Shay, what's up? You're on with Ty Anderson.
Hey, obviously the forechecking and the turnovers are god awful, and Pasternak, I can't say enough how bad his turnovers were. But I just want to say, I mean, have you guys seen the video of with like 1:25 left, and the broadcast puts up that they scored that Florida scored a goal, and that was 20 seconds before they actually scored.
I watched it. I was watching it actually on that network. My Nesson had glitched up, and so I turned it over to TNT. And I'm sitting there going, what the F's going on? Is this some weird celebration that they're skating around and that they've won this? And no, just somebody I think fully expected because they saw how they were playing that they're going to score a goal, had his finger on the button, slipped, and triggered it about 30 seconds before it actually happened.
Let me tell you, time never moved slower than when David Pasternak scored that go-ahead goal.
No question.
And the Panthers tied it up. You're sitting there. I remember I'm watching the game, up top, and I'm just like, I'm watching. I'm like, okay, that's been 4 minutes. I look up. I'm like, it's been 86 seconds. How? It was just time never moved slower than that moment.
All right. I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind sticking out in front of the brand.
Sure.
I want to ask you when we get back about the future of this team, what they're able to do, who you think is going to be here, who's not. What does all of this mean? Because, I mean, this is a strange situation where everybody involved knew it was about 2023. I mean, from what Don Sweeney mortgaged to make this happen, from Krejci coming back and Bergeron. And to be honest, now we're sitting here going, what the hell happens now? What does this team look like next year? I don't know. Apparently they are effed when it comes to their cap space. We don't know who's they went all in on this year and it blew up in their faces. Give me an idea of what we're looking at.
Yeah. So you have to make some serious moves. Right now, as it stands, you have a $4.1 million bonus overages counting against your cap. Now that is between Bergeron, Krejci's contracts, and also Swayman hit some performance bonuses as well. So you have $4.1 million in money coming off your cap before you even start. So if everyone's operating with an $82 million salary cap, you're operating with a 77.9 million. So that's fun right off the jump.
Is the cap the same or is it going to go up next season?
There's a good chance it's going to go up, but only by about $1 million.
Okay, so there's
the NHL did not have a good first round in terms of getting that cap up. Now, you really wanted the big markets. You wanted Boston, you wanted New York, you wanted Dallas, you wanted LA. If those markets advanced beyond the first round, you would have had
money,
which would have made the cap go up about probably 2 to 3, maybe even $4 million. If those teams went on deeper runs, it would have been really good for the NHL, would have been really good for their cap situation. They did not.
Only one of the 3 made it out of the first round.
Yes.
One of the 4, rather.
And Canadian teams going deep does pretty much nothing for the NHL in terms of American viewership.
Yep.
So that is not great. A nightmare for them would be It'd be great for the viewers for Edmonton versus Toronto, but American viewers, the casual viewers, would not tune in. They would not care.
Yeah.
They would not care. So they're in a weird spot here. Think about it. Carolina, Miami, like those aren't strong markets for them TV wise. So really kind of a lot hinging on what happens out west, I'd say, in terms of the NHL's viewership.
So you've got Patrice Bergeron. First of all, you think he's coming back or not?
I struggle with this because he's still so good.
That's what I was saying.
He's
like,
so good.
He could, but we also have to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who's played with punctured lungs, who could, every single year ends up having some awful thing happen to him where he gets crushed. I mean, it's just hockey body. Being as old as you are and taking the hits that he does, it's a completely different conversation than is he good enough to continue to play?
Yeah, and the other part of it too is that could you build a roster that is worth him coming back? Right? Like, I don't know if you can pull that rabbit out of your hat again where you flip Eric Holla for Pavel Zacha. You convince David Krejci to come back for $1 million, and you have David Pastrnak still making $6.6 million. Like, Pastrnak's going up to $11 million next year. Like, that is a whole impactful player. You know what I mean? That you now can't acquire because of the contracts that you have for some of these guys.
So what's realistic? Like, if you sit there and look at all these names, that's what listening to Rich and listening to you, we talk about the salary cap and the restrictions of what they can do, can't do. What's realistic as far as who can be on this roster where you're going to look at lines and look at D-men and look at goaltenders next season?
Yeah, that part is like you're going to have to bring up some of the kids from Providence, and you're going to have to say sink or swim. Like, this is what we can do. I don't think we can bring in a superstar. Like the idea, everyone was saying, "Oh, re-sign Tyler Bertuzzi." I physically don't see how you can do it. I've played around with it. I have no idea how you can do it. I've had a hard time building a 20 skater roster that meets the salary cap, ceiling for this team without stripping down so many pieces. You may very well, and I know this is going to sound crazy to some people, it may make the most sense to trade a guy like Linus Ullmark right now.
Well, see, that's another thing is that when you have. If you're going to have value anywhere, it's the fact that you have two starting goaltenders, like two high quality goaltenders on your roster. And you think that Linus would be, well, how does this all work? Right. Because once again, this is all stuff that's too complicated for my brain to figure out.
His no trade expands to a 16 team no trade. So it doubles in terms of where you could trade him. On the flip side though, he's making $5 million. You have a Vezina goaltender, Vezina winner for $5 million. Like that's hard to move on from, right? At the same time. So he's in that category. I'd probably put him lower tier though, in terms of probability of being moved. But then you have guys like you have Grzelcyk, you have Forbort, you have Mike Riley, all of whom are entering the final year of their contract, I believe. I think Grzelcyk may have one extra, but I'm not 100% on that right now off the top of my head. But they're redundant in the sense that they're all left shot D, right? And they all make $3 million. Grzelcyk makes 3.675, I think. So, you look at it that way, like you got to move at least one, maybe even two of these guys, right? And then you hope that you find a cheaper option somewhere, but this is where Tampa's been, Tampa's dipped because they've had to constantly find bargain bin kind of players because the roster gets too expensive, right? You got to, Dan, to your point, you have to identify those kind of players and you have to play the market and say, hey, it's September 10th. This guy still doesn't have a contract. He had 15 goals last year. Like, can we bring him in? Do we think he fits? Or do we want to go with the younger player? Anton Strawman is a great example of that, right? They bring in Anton Strawman last year on a PTO. They sign him for close to league minimum, right? He probably would have been a better guy to have than Jake Saboril because Jake Saboril didn't play. And Jake Saboril is making $1.1 million. Okay, well, if you save $350K on that, all right, now you have a slightly more wiggle room, right? But I don't see how they build a roster nearly as good as this year.
And you were talking about Patrice Bergeron, the second part of it being whether or not he would come back if he would even have any faith in the roster that they were able to put together with what they've got. Do you think that when it comes to having faith in things, did Coach Montgomery take a little bit of a hit?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and listen, coaches, they do take hits. Every coach who doesn't win a Stanley Cup takes a hit, and they have to go back to the drawing board. I think that what you're going to have to see next year is you're going to have to see Jim Montgomery take more of a hands-on approach to how he runs the locker room, how he runs the team, how he adjusts versus constantly deferring to his captains. Now, he has unbelievable captains. He has unbelievable leadership with Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, very smart, cerebral players who understand the tone and the nature of their bench and of their team. But you can't always say, well, I trust him. Like, no, you have to adjust, dude. This is why Bergeron's not player coach.
Yeah.
He's captain. Like, you're the head coach. Like, you got to help steer the ship. So I think that's something that's gonna have to change because I thought he got you know, it was funny. Like we kept talking every show I did, every podcast was Montgomery being out coach? Was Montgomery being out coach? And I was like, I don't know. But then when it got 5, 6, 7, he got out coached.
No question.
It was not pretty.
Well, I mean, on the other side, weren't they essentially sticking with their same lines for most of the series? Am I wrong in that? Like there was consistency throughout what they did with the Panthers?
Yeah, well, once Sam Bennett came back and went back on their second line, Bruins had no answer. They had no answer for Sam Bennett. They had no answer for how that balanced out what Florida was doing. Think about this, Rich, is that Alexander Barkov had a bad series. He did almost nothing, and he still didn't win that series. Like that speaks to how great that Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, combination really was for them.
Yeah, and it's strange too, because now that this is all done, and you've got today the postmortem, right? Isn't today what's it called?
It's called breakup day.
Breakup day. Yeah.
Had a few of those in my day. They're never fun. Everyone starts crying.
So, what is breakup day like? Like when you show up,
it's depression.
Is it? Do you get like one-on-ones with these guys? Are they all together and they're just gathering their stuff? And how does it go?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
You can, after the scrum kind of breaks up, you can talk to a guy one-on-one. I've done that in the past when it comes to like figuring out, hey, what are you looking for contract-wise? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be here? Do you want like your age? What's your term? Like, so like you can get that kind of stuff, but for the most part, it'll be us, everyone who covers the team, just kind of saying, hey, what are your plans for the summer? Were you hurt? Were you healthy? There was one player last year who had a miserable series. And I remember going, hey, were you hurt? And they were like, no, I was healthy. I was like, you sure?
Yeah. You want to give me something here?
You should have been.
I was like, I think we asked like 3 times, being like, trying to get you like the easy out here so that everyone doesn't crush
Is
you.
that guy still here?
That guy's not still here.
It's a strange process too, because it lasts like 4 hours.
Yeah.
So they just bring one guy in who met upstairs with Sweeney and Neely and Montgomery, and then he comes down, and then it's the next one, and you're just waiting around for everybody to come in. This year's different a little bit because they didn't make the run. Usually when they make that run to at least like the conference finals, you get like the good answers of injuries, but they only.
No one even had time to get hurt.
Exactly.
Well, that's it. But that is interesting. Like, how do we find out? Because we always talk about the laundry list that comes out after breakup day, where you find out what everyone was dealing with. Is that just a result of you guys asking the questions, or nobody like releases like what was actually wrong?
It's a badge of honor for them, but we know to ask that question, right?
Right.
So do most of the time they just straight up tell you what it was, or do you find out by back channels?
Nope.
A little bit of both, but once it's over, it's over.
Yeah,
they'll tell you because they're not protecting themselves.
Like
anymore.
Linus, we find out about Linus. That's the one, because he kept saying, "I feel good, thanks." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
that's one I'm curious.
I don't know if he ever will.
I'm curious if he's gonna say it, or if Don Sweeney is gonna say it, or Cam Neely, like that, because that's happened before too.
Who are you gonna spend the most time with? Like, who's like the biggest story to you?
Oh, I was gonna say my girlfriend.
Now that it's all over with.
Do you think Bergeron will talk today?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
I thought by him revealing his injury after the game 7 that he may not talk today, and that if he's going to retire, they'll wait and have a day for him.
But he would talk in just general terms.
He would, yeah. He did this last year. Last year when he kind of talked, he basically said, "Oh, I said what I said in Carolina. I need some time." And then we'll find out more, because it was so raw after Sunday's game. 5 minutes after losing overtime, hey, what are you doing next year? Like it's a little raw, right? So he may have some more clarity. I don't think he's gonna, but he may have some in terms of what he's looking for, what he wants to do.
I'm retiring. Like, hello,
right?
Breaking news.
Wait,
hello.
Thanks for asking. This is what I decided.
Yes.
The guy who to your question, Rich, Tyler Bertuzzi, because like he just fits so well.
I love that dude. I mean,
he fits so well.
Well, think about it. Which player actually played up to their potential this whole series?
It was him.
Him.
And he got better with the Bruins as he went.
Yep.
Like he started kind of slow, but once the dam broke, he couldn't stop scoring. And like he's a guy that I look at and I'm like, he might be better than DeBrusk. He might be better than Taylor Hall. Like this is a guy that you may want to move mountains to keep if you can.
I'd rather have him than Taylor Hall.
Yeah, he only made 2.4 last year. He's due for a pretty big raise, but
then he was great in the playoffs.
And he's in his late 20s. He's in the prime of his career.
Yeah.
I mean, you figure double that, right?
So like
get him back.
You guys are talking about like hockey trades or I'm sorry, like how do you remain competitive? A good old fashioned hockey trade might be the way to go. Like, do you package Taylor Hall and Brandon Carlo, right? That'd be $10.1 million out the door. And you bring in a guy who makes like $6 million. Like, could you do that? Like the Panthers did that with Tkachuk. That's how they got Matthew Tkachuk. They
that changed them. Right?
Yeah, they packaged Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau, 2 core pieces of their team, and brought in Matthew Tkachuk, and it shook up the core. But it was a 2-for-1 that you looked at and said, okay, like you're getting a really good player. You're losing 2 really good players, but you're getting a really good player. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like they're trading the backbone of their defense, Mackenzie Weegar. That's a bad trade. And yeah, the Florida defense is kind of crap, but you see what Matthew Tkachuk can bring, and you're like, oh wow, this is like a takeover kind of guy. All right, so maybe there's a deal out there, for the Bruins.